The Prisoner's Promise. The Bougainville Civil War, 1988 to 1998, was a decade-long conflict that fractured families and devastated communities. It was a war fought over land, identity, and survival. Amidst the bloodshed, stories of sorrow and resilience emerged, one of which was the story of Samuel and Elena, a tale of love, suffering, and a promise made in captivity. Captured in the crossfire, Samuel was just 22 when he joined the Bougainville Revolutionary Army, BRA. He was not a soldier by choice, but by necessity. His village had been burned to ground, his family displaced, and he had nowhere else to turn. The war had taken everything from him. So he decided to fight for what little remained. One fateful afternoon, during a mission to transport supplies to a besieged village, Samuel's group was ambushed by Papua New Guinea Defense Force, PNGF, soldiers. Outgunned and outnumbered, Samuel and a few others were captured while the rest of his comrades were killed in the firefight. The prisoners were blindfolded, their hands tied behind their backs, and they were forced marched for hours to a makeshift military outpost deep in the jungle. The prison was nothing more than a wooden shack surrounded by barbed wire, where captured rebels and suspected sympathizers were held in deplorable conditions. Samuel was thrown into a cell with two other men, both of whom were barely alive. Hunger, disease, and beatings had stripped them of their humanity. Samuel knew that his fate was likely the same. He would be tortured for information, and if he didn't break, he would be executed. A nurse among the wounded. Elena was a nurse, but her work was unlike that of those in hospitals. She had been recruited by the Red Cross to provide medical aid to war prisoners, a job that made her both a savior and a target. She despised the war for what it had done to her people. Yet she was committed to her duty, refusing to let her emotions interfere with her mission to save lives. When Elena first saw Samuel, he was bloodied and weak, his wrists raw from the ropes that had bound him. She knelt beside him and gently cleaned his wounds, her touch careful but distant. She had treated many prisoners before, and she knew that most did not survive long enough for her work to matter. Still, something about Samuel made her pause. His eyes, though weary, still burned with defiance. As days passed, Elena continued to treat Samuel, and an unspoken connection grew between them. She would bring him an extra piece of bread when the guards weren't watching, whisper news of the outside world when she changed his bandages. In return, Samuel shared his past with her, his lost family, the home he longed to return to, and his fear that he would die nameless in that prison. One night, as Elena was treating him, Samuel grasped her hand with what little strength he had left. "If I survive this," he whispered, "I will find you again, no matter what happens." Elena didn't know if she believed him, but she squeezed his hand in response, a silent promise of her own, escape and separation. The war did not wait for love to bloom. One night, the BRA launched a daring attack on the prison camp, intent on rescuing their captured comrades. Gunfire and explosions tore through the jungle. In the chaos, Samuel's cell was broken open. He barely had time to register what was happening before he was pulled to his feet by a fellow rebel. Elena, caught in the middle of the battle, ran from a medical tent, searching desperately for Samuel. She saw him, his face illuminated for just a second by the flash of gunfire. Their eyes met, but before either could react, a grenade exploded between them, throwing Elena to the ground. When she regained consciousness, the battle was over. The prison was in ruins, bodies scattered across the ground. Samuel was gone. She searched for him for days, but he had vanished into the jungle. The war raged on, and Elena was forced to continue her work, never knowing if Samuel had survived or if his promise had died along with the others. Years of silence. The war dragged on, leaving nothing but ruins in its wake. Villages were burned, families torn apart, and countless lives lost. Elena continued her work as a nurse, moving from one war-torn settlement to another, tending to the wounded and burying the dead. She never spoke of Samuel, never allowed herself to hope that he might still be alive. Samuel, meanwhile, had survived, wounded but determined. He had fled deep into the jungle with the remaining BRA fighters. The years that followed were a blur of guerrilla warfare, hunger, and loss. But through it all, he never forgot Elena. The memory of her kindness, her gentle touch, was the one thing that kept him human in a world where killing had become second nature. Then, after nearly a decade of bloodshed, the war came to an end. The Bougainville Peace Agreement was signed in 2001, and the island began the slow process of rebuilding. Yet, for Elena, the war had stolen something that peace could not return. Samuel's promise had been nothing more than a whisper in the past, a hope extinguished by the brutality of war. A promise kept. It was a quiet evening when Elena heard her name spoken in a voice she thought she would never hear again. She turned, her heart pounding, and there he was. Samuel stood before her, older, scarred, but alive. He had searched for her, just as he had promised. Through refugee camps, burned villages, and whispered rumors, he had followed the fragments of her existence, never giving up hope that she had survived. Elena ran to him, the years of separation vanishing in an instant. They held each other, neither able to speak. The war had taken so much from them, but it had not taken this moment. Samuel's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "I told you I'd find you." Tears streamed down Elena's face as she smiled. "And I waited, rebuilding a life together." The end of the war did not mean the end of their struggles. Bougainville was in ruins, its people still suffering from the scars of battle. But Samuel and Elena found solace in each other. Together, they worked to heal the broken. Elena as a nurse, Samuel as a builder, helping to reconstruct homes and lives. Their love, forged in war and strengthened by loss, became a symbol of resilience. They married in a small village ceremony, surrounded by survivors, their union a testament to the fact that even in the darkest times, love could endure. Years later, when they had children of their own, they would tell them the story of how a promise, made in the shadows of a war prison, had led them back to each other. And though the war had taken much from them, it had not taken the one thing that mattered most, their love. Their story became a quiet legend among the people of Bougainville, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, hope and love could still find a way to survive. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel if you want to see more videos like this. Much love and stay blessed.
Udah populer sekali manggilnya.